So in late October 2023, after being voted out of leadership, former Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy, gave a speech at the Oxford Union about the United States Republican Party, international relations, particularly concerning Russia, and the likely nomination of Donald J. Trump to the presidency from the Republican Party. So I rather enjoyed McCarthy's speech. I thought he was funny, he was clear, he was personable, and he was really likable. So you've probably seen this clip from his speech that shows him reflecting on the State of the Union address, and he compared the Democratic Party to the look and feel of the Republican Party. I personally think McCarthy is right, that for better or worse, the Democratic Party looks like what America is, and it looks like what Democrats want America to be. On the other hand, the Republican Party looks like what America was and what they want it to remain. Mostly white and men. McCarthy goes on to say that under his leadership, more minorities and women became elected officials under the banner of the Republican Party. Through my own experience joining the party in 2007 during Obama's first campaign, I can tell you that both parties use diversity to accomplish the aims of the establishment, but that diversity does little to nothing to serve the interests of Black Americans, as the original Republican Party was designed to do. So the Republican Party, just like the Democratic Party, has opted for a deviation from originalism and have opted for benign neglect, where the interests of Black Americans aren't represented by anybody. And we, Republicans, lose votes because the current version of the Republican platform smells like antebellum Democrats and the Confederacy, and that's gross and unattractive and offensive, at least to Black Americans. So in his 26-minute Oxford speech, McCarthy makes it clear that he wanted to evolve the Republican Party into a more responsive political party and perhaps back to its original intents of abolition, economic recapitalization, and uniting the country around the Black-white lineage line. So hear McCarthy here for about a minute in his own words.
I'll tell you a little story about becoming leader. I become leader, and we had lost the majority. And in America, we have what is called the State of the Union, where the president comes in and gives a speech. And it's unique to the State of the Union. It's the night that people will pick what ties they wear, what clothes, what dress. They want a certain color because one side stands up and the other side stands up. It really defines where people are on different issues. And I'm sitting there at the very beginning, because it happens in January. I just became leader. And I look and the Democrats have taken the majority. They had a big race, and so they stand up. And then the Republicans stand up. And when I look at the Democrats, they actually look like America. When I look at my party, we look like the most restrictive country club in America. And so I say to myself, either I'm going to be the leader of declining and extincting the party, or I have to change the way we look and challenge where we run.
So McCarthy did not mention Black Americans, and really only Republican Donald J. Trump has been most direct about the credit owed and investment due to America's founding Black population. So I want you to listen to Trump as he talks about multi-generational Black Americans during the 2019 Black History Month commemoration at the White House.
Today, we are here to honor the extraordinary contributions of African Americans to every aspect of American life, history, and culture. From the earliest days of this nation, African American leaders, pioneers, and visionaries have uplifted and inspired our country in art, in science, literature, law, film, politics, business, and every arena of national life. The depth and glory of these contributions are beyond measure. You know it, I know it, and everybody knows it. Since the beginning of our republic, African Americans have given their heart, their love, and their very lives to the pursuit. And you know this better than anybody. You have worked so hard. I guess when you get right down to it, we're all working very hard. But the pursuit of liberty and justice for all. So we pledge in the honor of our great African American community, to build a future where every American child can live in safety, dignity, liberty, and peace. As Americans, we all share the same dreams, the same hopes, and the same magnificent destiny. We are now and will forever be one people, one family, and one glorious nation under God.
So as you listen to that clip, I know it was hard to remember that you're supposed to hate Donald Trump, but you're supposed to love Joe Biden, who in December of 2020, immediately upon winning the election due to Black people, he condescendingly told a Zoom full of Black civil rights leaders that they would have to beg Hispanic immigrants for Negro equity, since white Democrats, including himself, and some white Republicans, including Ronald Reagan, Henry Kissinger, and George W. Bush, had already decided to give the United States to foreigners. Way to have our backs, Joe. So while McCarthy spoke of diversity in context of race, gender, and ethnicity generally, Trump correctly spoke in the vein of the Republican Party and the 1960s civil rights era. Trump spoke of Black Americans, point blank, period, right? Our lineage. So some 60 years after Negroes died to once again secure civil rights after Reconstruction, we know that diversity, the presence of difference, does not translate into what Republicans accepting our feedback. It doesn't translate into Republicans or Democrats actually advocating for our interests. And I don't really know how the party can evolve when they can't even mention Black Americans without stereotyping us, when they minimize the realities of inequities against us. How are we supposed to evolve when we don't have real leaders in the party who are willing to do what McCarthy said, which is do the unpopular thing because it's the right thing to do for the country and because the right thing eventually saves lives. In 2023, just as in 1776 and 1865, the call to action is to dismantle the bigotry that Black Americans are experiencing and to have the courage to speak about it. But that's not the Republican Party we get. We get a Republican Party that's constantly talking about 1350. We get a Republican Party that's constantly talking about, the idea that 70% of Black fatherless homes are contributing to poverty and to crime. You get this idea that Black men aren't involved in their children's lives, when the reality is that Black men are more involved than all other fathers combined in the activities of daily living of their children. You get this idea that only whites are welcome in the Republican Party when white Republican citizens and white Republican elected officials applaud or fundraise for the murders of Black Americans. What a waste of opportunity and a moral failing. We see that white people are most welcome in the Republican Party when white Republicans justify the murders of Black people and say that they died from things that the coroner's report says is not true. You see that the Republican Party is open most to Black people when white Republicans claim that descendants of US slaves no longer experience bigotry or inequities when the data supports something else. When white Republican citizens and white Republican elected officials attempt to remove Martin Luther King Jr. from textbooks or remove Frederick Douglass from textbooks in their campaign against anti-woke, where do Black Americans fit into that type of platform? And why would we want to? We see that the Republican Party doesn't have the leadership to do what McCarthy was saying when Republicans demonstrate supreme emotional unintelligence and immorality, second time, by defending the rhetoric that slaves benefited from slavery. That was ridiculous and silly and should have been changed immediately, which I told the Department of Education in Florida. You see the idea that only whites are welcomed in how Black Republicans are rebuked and shamed if they provide feedback on the missteps of white Republicans or critiques about their policies. Byron Donalds, need to know your place, because that's how the Republican Party operates. And you see that only whites are welcome in the Republican Party when they attempt to bastardize the legacy of Black Americans by supporting mass immigration instead of actually limiting mass immigration, which they say they're for. But I don't think Ronald Reagan and George Bush actually supported that at all. And Ronald Reagan's a darling of the Republican Party, so it kind of doesn't make sense to make that claim. Two wings, same bird. When you look at the anti-Black rhetoric of today's GOP, it sounds like we've been co-opted by antebellum Democrats. So while McCarthy wanted to change the way we look or change the way we function, I wonder if that's one of the reasons he was voted out, because the party isn't ready. Make no mistake about it, the United States is in a fight for our sovereignty against anti-historical forces within the Republican Party and within the nation. Lincoln said the same thing in the 1840s. Kennedy said the same thing in the 1960s. And at this point, we really have to ask ourselves, can this Republican Party actually help us to save us? Can the Democratic Party help save America? I'm skeptical, but what do you think? Are Americans no longer capable of saving ourselves? Are we no longer capable of producing the type of Lincoln-esque leaders that we deserve and that we need at this point in our country's evolution? When we look at what's happening around the country, whether it be farmers in the Bible Belt, whether it be rusting and disinvested suburbs in the Rust Belt, whether it be the economic needs of development and opportunity of Black residents in Chicagoland, or the equal protections needed for the descendants of U.S. slaves in Mississippi, Alabama, and the larger U.S. Confederacy, can't even call it that, the larger rebellious Confederacy, are we able to develop those kinds of leaders? Tell me what you think we need to move America forward and to finally unite our nation. McCarthy's out. Will the next guy, the new guy, do any better?